In October of 2021, I completed my final games degree subject at university. But how exactly did I go from making games like this to this? Well, I'm not a natural programmer. It just didn't come easy to me. In fact, for half of my degree, I had no idea how to program. So let me tell you how this happened. In March of 2019, I started my undergraduate degree at the University of Technology, Sydney. I've always been interested in all forms of media, and I've always had a passion to create. When it came to picking degrees, the formerly named Bachelor of Science in Games Development, now Bachelor of Games Development, stood out to me. This sounded like fun, and who wouldn't want to go to uni to have fun? Well, being in the Faculty of Engineering and Information Technology, there was obviously a large focus on programming, where I knew nothing, having only touched PHP and SQL in my senior years of high school. Shout out Mr. Wood. So here I am, really living the P's get degrees lifestyle, only caring about passing my subjects. That was until the end of my first year when I took my first game subject, Introduction to Computer Game Development. This subject is taught in Unity and C#, with no assumed prior knowledge in either. It introduces us to the core interface tools of Unity, experience in applying vector and matrix mathematics to transform objects in 2D and 3D coordinate space, and a strong focus on programming in C#. Essentially everything from the start to being able to build a basic game. So, there was one main assignment in this subject with two parts to it. Recreate an arcade game and add your own twist to it. And I chose to do Tetris. Some moving blocks, some blocks getting destroyed. Can't be that hard, right? But I struggled. So much in fact that I nearly failed the subject. And that was because I couldn't grasp any concepts in programming. Nothing that I was taught I was able to retain. Nothing that I looked at made sense to me. And this was just so discouraging because where I was struggling, it seemed like everyone around me just got it. But I stuck with it and put together a really crappy Tetris remake that out of pure stubbornness I would later redo in its entirety, but that's for another video. So my spin on the original Tetris was simply adding a variation of each Tetris piece that would alter the game when the piece was destroyed. Pretty much everything in this subject I learned purely through tutorials. And I can't even say I learnt, because it was just me copying information. So, first year of uni's down, first game subject is completed, and still, I have no idea what I'm doing. Now, autumn of 2020, the start of COVID, and online learning. I had my next game subject, Introduction to Computer Game Design, which has now been renamed Game Design Methodologies. This subject teaches the fundamentals of theoretical concepts and practical methodologies needed to ideate, communicate, implement, and improve upon general game design. This was the first subject that allowed us to work in a group to create a game within 4 weeks. The aim of this project was to enforce good game design, so you probably won't see games from this subject on Steam anytime soon. Anyway, my group came up with Coffee Rush. A player just wants his morning coffee, but has his coffee beans stolen. In an attempt to retrieve his coffee beans, the player is led on a chase through different areas in this super basic platformer. So we had to conduct playtesting sessions and iterate on the game's overall design based on feedback from these playtesting sessions. Each member in our group had to create a level in the game which would also seamlessly implement a mechanic and teach the player the mechanic in a way that flows into the overall gameplay. I created the first level in the game, which was the first thing the player would experience after the tutorial level. My programming skills in this subject were still pretty non-existent, and I had to implement a bounce pad mechanic. Now, lucky for me, pretty much every platformer has some form of bounce pad mechanic, so there was endless resources for me to utilize. During this semester, I also took a computer graphics subject taught in JavaScript and 3JS. My memories of this class was the tutor going on passionate rants about vectors, radians, and a whole bunch of complex three-dimensional mathematical nonsense that made no sense to me. Now this subject had a semester-long project where I got to work with a close friend of mine. So since we had a lot of creative freedom with this project, we decided on doing a project that incorporated his music in some way. It was this project that I first worked in Blender to do some basic 3D modeling to create a stage that we would have instruments playing on, which would be fully interactable and controllable through a custom graphic user interface. After an extremely rough start with this project, where we experienced a lot of issues with some modeling, camera, and texturing issues, by the final submission, we managed to pull it together really nicely. We were also one of 2 groups in the subject to get nominated to present this project at a showcase. So that brings us to spring of 2020, where I took my next game subject, Advanced Games Programming, which was taught entirely in Unreal Engine and C++. After nearly failing a subject taught in C++ the semester before, I was not looking forward to having to do it again this semester. So there was a thought that had crossed my mind. I was halfway through my degree and had obviously learned a few things, but one thing I could honestly say was that I felt like I had learned nothing useful. I felt like I knew just as much in how to make games to where I was at the start of 2019, and that was nothing. So now I had a goal. I was determined to prove to myself that I belonged in this degree, that I can learn how to make a game, but really what I wanted was how to take an idea and turn it into code. Every week for this subject, we would have a lab that would teach different topics of Unreal Engine and C++. During these labs, we also had a large push on learning procedural generation and artificial intelligence. So, this subject had one assignment that was broken up into 3 parts. Extend on the artificial intelligence that we learnt in class with our own concepts for different behaviors, implement some procedurally generated content inside of the game, and put all of the labs and the other 2 assignment parts together into one large first-person shooter prototype. My original idea for the first part of this assignment was to have the AI in the game be able to listen to the player's footsteps and shooting, and I tried to get this to work, but I just couldn't. So my next idea was to create a more realistic behavior for the AI. I wanted the AI to run away if his health was low and be able to reload his non-existent ammo if his ammo was low. And with some really bad code, I actually managed to get this to work. As simple as this idea was, this was the first time in my programming career that I had an idea for something and managed to just get it into workable code, and I was honestly so happy. Now, the second part of this assignment, I literally just extended on what I'd just done in the first part, but now with physical models. I had guns and health potions spawning into the game in random locations that I kept in a list that the AI would be able to access to find the nearest location for whatever it needed. So again, a simple idea, but this required a bit extra work as I had to refactor a lot of the code throughout the program to get it to work. But I was getting somewhere now. I was starting to have bigger and more ambitious ideas in my programming that I knew I was able to implement, and with this, my rise to peak stupid. So the final part of the assignment was simply polishing what we had done and making sure that all parts of the assignment were together along with the labs into one big prototype game that me and my partner called Wave 25. Autumn 2021, my final year of uni, my first capstone project in Game Design Studio 1. Everything I've learned at uni put into our first big project. This project is split into 4 sprints with 2 weeks in between each, where we would design, iterate, and build upon the game based on various user feedback reports that we gathered throughout the semester. So we were put into groups pretty early on in the subject, and my group consisting of 4 other people found a common love for roguelikes. Dead Cells, Nuclear Throne, Binding of Isaac, Hades. We loved it. And naturally we wanted to create our own, so we came up with Thaum. Thaum follows the story of Jop the Wizard, imprisoned for practicing wizardry, your father's magical stones stripped from you. You have 2 choices: give up or claim back what's yours and escape the stronghold. However, this task will not be easy, as each of the 3 wardens has successfully begun controlling the power of the magic stones for themselves, and only you can stop them. Each member of this group played a pretty pivotal role in the overall design and development of this game. Matt H was responsible for the player movement and level generation. Rowan was responsible for the pixel art, character design, and lighting. Matt L was responsible for world and level design, Jonah was responsible for the user interface and music and sound design, and I was responsible for all of the AI interactions and behaviors in the game. I still look back at this game and treat it like my baby. Obviously, being within a time limit, there are still bugs here and there with the game, but I think overall it's an extremely fun game to play, and it's a project I would love to create in its entirety over again to publish onto something like Steam. Now, this brings us to our final semester of university and my final capstone project in Game Design Studio 2. Following the success that my group had in our first capstone project, winning an award for best game in the subject, we decided to stay together as a group for our final capstone project. This subject had a semester-long project, so roughly 12 weeks, with 5 sprints split between 2 and 3 week intervals. Now, being in the same group, we had already used the main idea that we'd come up with, so when it came time to decide on a game we wanted to make, we kind of struggled. We wanted to make something equally impressive, but we also had no idea what to make. So knowing that we were soon to graduate, and having not created any games in Unity 3D as of yet, our main concept was to just create a game in 3D. Our tutor had also mentioned that he hadn't seen any fighting games done in this subject yet, so this was also an idea we wanted to try out. Now, after a few days of discussing the type of fighting game, we had an idea. An online multiplayer networked fighting game of gladiators fighting in a Roman Colosseum. But our own twist to it was to have visually humorous elements in it, with fish slapping quickly becoming our mascot to the game. It was during this time we also saw a Steam page on a game called Slash's Keep, which had an art style that we quickly fell in love with. 2D characters in a 3D world. So this is what we rolled with, and we came up with Colosseum, a humorous online multiplayer game that features 3 game modes: Deathmatch, King of the Fish, and The Floor is Lava, with the support of 2 to 4 players with various weapons and procedurally generated terrains. Okay, so being the same group again, we all split our roles up and we really wanted to put to the test our own capabilities and put together an extremely polished, impressive game. Matt H handled all player interactions and controls, including full controller support. Rowan was the character designer and model rigger. Matt L handled the user interface and windscreens. Jonah handled music and sound designs, as well as the weapon interactions. And I handled the networking setup, world and level design, and the game mode and type logic. So this was a game that really tested everything we knew about game design and development. And after honestly the most excruciating 12 weeks, we managed to finish this project with a high level of polish that we're really proud of. So I didn't cover every project that I've worked on, so if you wanted to see more, definitely leave a comment if you want to see other projects that I worked on at university. Otherwise, I hope this video was entertaining and gave insight into what doing a games degree is like. I will say this, if you do doubt your abilities or don't think you're good at programming, it does take time and commitment, but if you put the work in, it will start to click and things will become easier to learn. It's not an overnight thing, so don't get discouraged if it doesn't come as quickly or if you see people around you achieving more. Everyone is at a different point in their journey, and some people, even if they're in the same classes as you or levels of employment, may have been doing this for much longer. Everyone starts somewhere. I hope you guys all enjoyed this video, and if so, please leave a like, consider subscribing, and leave a comment about what other types of videos you would like to see. Again, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.